The Collective Whisper Podcast with Simon K. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Collective Whisper Podcast. I am your host, Simon K, and we're glad to have you on board again. We have a very special guest this evening and one you're going to really love. So before we get to that, we'd just like to remind you, please support the show, please review the show if you can and if you like, and please spread the word. We would be much obliged. Thank you very much. This week's guest is Mr. Carl Verheyen. Carl Verheyen is a highly accomplished American musician renowned for his exceptional guitar skills and versatile musical career. He's best known for being the guitarist of the legendary band Supertramp, as well as the leader of his own band, the Carl Verheyen Band. Beyond that, he has established himself as a sought-after session guitarist in Los Angeles. Guitar Magazine ranked him as one of the world's top 10 guitarists, a testament to his immense talent and influence. Furthermore, he received the prestigious Best Guitarist Award at the LA Music Awards during their 6th annual ceremony. Throughout his illustrious career, Carl Verheyen has collaborated with numerous esteemed artists such as the Bee Gees, Chad Wackerman, Dolly Parton, Victor Feldman, Richard Elliott and Stanley Clarke. He has also left his mark on various film soundtracks including The Crow, The Usual Suspects, Ratatouille and Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. Additionally, his guitar skills have graced popular TV shows like Cheers, Seinfeld and Scrubs. Not only a performing artist, but Verheyen has also been involved in music education. He served as an adjunct instructor of studio jazz guitar at the prestigious USC Thornton School of Music. Additionally, he frequently provides instructional performances at the Musicians Institute in Hollywood, California. Furthermore, he has authored instructional books like Improvising Without Scales and Studio City, a compilation of articles for guitar for the Practicing Musician magazine. It was founded in 1987. Verheyen has released solo albums, Atlas Overload, Solo Guitar Improvisations, and Reel to Reel. He has collaborated with notable musicians on projects like Trading Aids, featuring renowned guitarists like Robin Ford, Albert Lee, Joe Bonamassa, and others. Albums like Mustang Run, 2013, and Alone, Solo Guitar Improvisations Volume 2, 2015, showcased his mastery of both instrumental and vocal pieces. Verheyen continued to release new material including The Grand Design 2016, Essential Blues 2018, and Sundial 2021. Carl Verheyen's impressive career, marked by his virtuosic guitar playing and diverse musical contributions, have firmly established him as a celebrated figure in the music industry. His work with Supertramp and the Carl Verheyen Band, as well as his solo endeavors, have left a lasting impact on the world of guitar and music as a whole. Welcome to the show, Carl Verheyen. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you very much.
So, Carl, what are you up to at the moment? What's happening in your world?
Well, I just finished releasing a brand new album, and it's called Riverboat Sky. And it was written over the last couple of years, but the nice thing is we were able to tour just after the pandemic. People were still wearing masks and play the songs, and then yet another tour. So I really played these songs for over a year and a half on the road before recording most of them. There's a few ones that have never been played prior to the sessions, but it was great because speaking of Supertramp, Rick Davies, the leader of the band Supertramp, and the keyboard player and one of the singers, he always lamented that the album is a demo for the tour. Meaning you record the music, then you go out on the road and it gets much more developed and the arrangements really find themselves and parts sink in and get better and everything. So this was a beautiful opportunity for me because we were able to get out on the tour and work these songs and see what's working, what's not. I can, touring, you sort of sometimes develop a bit of shtick, meaning this great lick worked wonderful last night. I'm going to put it in tonight. And then a new tour develops new material like that. So over the couple of tours, I was really able to develop, not necessarily in the solos, but in the parts and the vocals and the vocal harmonies. I was able to really get that together. So when we went into the studio with the touring band, we added an old friend of mine, Chad Wackerman, on drums. And incidentally, I just played with him in Stuttgart last week. And then we added Jim Cox, who's been on all my records on keyboards, and Dave Murata, John Mader, and Troy Dexter did all. They're the touring band, which are brilliant musicians. So it was good to just get some fresh stuff on there, like a different drummer on this tune and a different keyboard player on that tune. And but we knew what we wanted. I knew what I wanted. That was a real pleasure. So I think it's my best record yet, and it came out on vinyl as well.
One point I wanted to say to you there, which is a great point, is what you were saying there about the whole demo turning into the album being really a demo for the tour. Because I imagine, for lots of bands, what happens is you make an album, then you tour it, and then in some ways you'd nearly like to re-record the album because you found better ways to play it or what should have been there. So it's they're always a more polished result at the end of the tour, aren't they?
Yeah, and on tour, when you play a song towards the end of the evening and you are so warmed up and so in the moment, oftentimes the solo ideas are just flowing much better than when you're in a studio environment with headphones on and everything else. So all that's good. I'm really proud of this record. So I've been doing that. Recently, I did a little tour of the Pacific Northwest here in the USA. Washington down the coast, and then I went to Stuttgart to play the Stuttgart Jazz Open Festival, and we did that, and then we came back and did a 1,200 seater in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which was just basically called a fly date. But I don't love fly dates. I have a big guitar rig that sounds amazing, and it's just like I feel like you're not really hearing the real me without that. Now, I know that's psychological and everything, but it's so inspiring to hear stereo clean sounds and sort of a wet, dry distortion sound that's all dialed in. So that's really cool.
And that's what you're used to, I suppose, your rig as well, because it's funny, I've seen over the last few years some players changing from, analog rigs to digital rigs. Like, for example, Guthrie Govan, or Guthrie Govan, if you want to call him, from the UK, phenomenal player, but he recently has changed a lot of his rig. And he said for him, he thought it would be a terrible process because, the whole feel of these amps and the pedals and everything. But then I suppose for some players like that, you have the versatility of the digital age, and it's easier to bring things around, isn't it?
Yeah. And, I've played with Guthrie a lot, and he's such a good player. I think he could find a way to make the sound work for him. It's getting really good. I took a thing called a Kemper profiler into Sunset Sound. I have a lot of amplifiers. I have about 50 amplifiers. I keep 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think 6 or 7 in Europe. But here at my house, I have a good 40, 45. I didn't need 2 Vox AC30s or 2 Fender Princetons or 2 of the same kind of, Fender heads. So what I did was I took about 32 amps down to Sunset Sound Studio 2. And I hired an engineer, and that's the room where Van Halen recorded, and it's just a fantastic sounding guitar room. And we profiled about 32 of my amps 5 times each with 5 different microphones. So we took all the right mics that you would use to record guitar, and we put them on those amps and we profiled them. Yeah, it took 2 days to do it. Boring days. Go out.
Yeah, tedious.
Tedious stuff. But we had a second engineer to run out there and change the mic out and then profile it and then save it and then label it. So I sell that whole collection at a place called Sweetwater, which is a Sweetwater. So, but I use that for demos and for playing on people's records when I don't need to mic something up, and it does sound really good. I can't see using it live. A student of mine plays in the band Chicago, and we saw the band a few years ago, and I went backstage, and he goes, "How was the guitar sound?" And I said, "You weren't moving any air, were you?" Meaning you weren't miking any speakers. It was all in your earbuds, your ear pods or whatever. And it sounded great. It sounded good. The sounds were right, perfect. But I could tell that it wasn't coming off the stage in any way, or even off under the stage.
Yeah, and that has a different effect because, you know, if you consider the old wall of Marshalls or whatever you want, whatever amps you were using, when you have the raw power coming from those and the speakers are moving, if that's all taken away, it's a different dynamic, different feel. And of course, if you never use much of that, you don't miss it so much. But I think it's hard for the purist then to lose that, as you said, rush of air, isn't it?
Yeah, there's something about the ears in your back, in the back of your knees, hearing it.
Yeah.
So I had a good talk with Eric Johnson one time. We were doing this festival together, and he and I have the same concept. We stand in a place where our rig is behind us over there, and so we don't stand in front of the rig. It's better to hear what it's doing in the room. So move to the left a little bit and hear what it's doing in the room. You know, that's an important thing. It dates back to all the records I've made where I ask the engineer, if we're doing a guitar solo, you go ahead and put whatever mic you want on the speaker cabinet. But I also want you to go out there and walk around the studio room to hear where the sound is blooming, where it really kind of opens up and it just sounds great, and put a microphone there. And you might have to get up on
like a sweet spot.
Yeah. You might have to get up on a stool because it's here, or you might go way over in that corner, but you just find it. Then sometimes, because the phasing can cancel it out, they have to time align the tracks. But once they do, take the track that's right on the, I keep pointing down here because there's a couple of Fender amps right here. But if you then time align the tracks to move the close mic back a little bit, there might be a little bit of latency when you're playing, but you light up because you hear what you're hearing when you go out in the room. You know, you hear it. So if I'm in the control room hearing it over the speakers, I don't mind that little bit of latency just so I hear the big sound.
And the thing is, you know, I noticed on one of your videos as well, like when you're recording all the chains, you know, the amp, the mics, the different settings, you're kind of having everything in such a way that you can change each one separately. So, you know, if the amp's working perfectly, if you have a good mic placement, but maybe the room acoustics, you know, you can change that chain in the recording process and, you know, sweeten a spot or, you know, lower the bass frequencies. Whereas, you know, obviously if you're just recording with the amp and you have the mic and you're not kind of putting them all into each separate channels, maybe you're mixing it up too early. So you kind of have that chain and then you can mix it better later, can't you?
Yeah, you sure can. Yeah. I try to hire great engineer. Always hire great engineers because I figure my job is to know the music and to know how to get the sound. Their job is to capture it, you know, and know microphone placement and EQ and, you know, all kinds of phasing things that I almost don't want to spend the time doing. I know a lot of guys are really good at engineering. My engineering chops are just enough to get me able to do home studio stuff for people's records and stuff like that. So I got just that amount. You know, if you asked me to record a drum set, I would have no idea.
I suppose what happened is over the years, you have discovered your sound, you know, and whether that be doing session work or doing work with Supertramp or with your own Carl Verheyen Band, you know your sound for that setup. And I've heard even, you know, John Mayer talk about, you know, sometimes going doing session work and he would just have a laptop and everything would be clean and then it would be reamped later. So I think there's so many different ways to do things nowadays, isn't there? Because
Yeah, there sure is.
like even here, I have it somewhere. I bought one of these things recently and it's just like it's a Nooks thing and I use it for practicing. And it basically is just a headphone amp. But it's amazing when you consider the sounds they can get from headphone amps nowadays compared to 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah, or 30 years ago, you know, when Tom Schultz came out with the Rock,
Yes,
you
I
know,
remember.
in a little box like that. Yeah. He called the local guitar center in Los Angeles. There was only one guitar center. It became a huge chain, but he called the local and he says, "I'm looking for somebody to demonstrate my new product at the NAMM show." And they
Oh,
called me.
wow. Okay.
1983. So I was pretty young. And I went to the NAMM. I think it was my first NAMM show, and I played 4 days out of the Rock Man. And I think they gave me $1,000 a hotel room and a rock band. So I was like in heaven because Tom was there, you know.
Things have changed in the sense that, I know myself playing in bands over the years. In some bands, you have a simple setup. In other bands, I was playing one band, I had a guitar and a synth setup, and we were doing kind of more progressive stuff. And, the problem is the more things you have to set up, the more things can go wrong during the set. And this is the problem then if you're doing guitar parts and keyboard parts on a MIDI guitar and then the synth goes down, you're kind of having to just have guitar sound. So the simpler you can make it for yourself to set up in that kind of situation is great. So modern technology is good like this.
I had a terrifying experience. We had a record release party concert at a giant club called Billboard Live, and it must have been around maybe the end of the 80s. And I had what they called a Bradshaw rack, a Bradshaw rig. There was a guy named Bob Bradshaw, and he was rack mounting all this studio gear in 16 space racks plus an amp rack. It was just a monumental. It was programmable programmable effects loops. So my entire concert, my entire show with my trio, 3 guys, right, was going to be song 1. The intro is preset 1, then preset 2 was the chorus, and then preset 3 was the solo, and then 4. Then bank 2 was the same. So literally right before showtime, some stagehand walks by and trips over my cable that plugged the whole thing in and basically geeked all 99 programs. So the entire show and the whole thing, I had different reverbs for different sections, only stuff that I knew, Well, the delay can change and go to slapback delay, and then it can come back to program time delays. It was all MIDI, right? So it geeked it, and I had nothing. So backstage, there was a Fender Twin, and in my car was a rat pedal that I still have today. It's like somewhere over there on that bunch of pedals over there. But I had a rat pedal in my car, and I think a delay pedal.
Oh, okay,
and,
okay.
I just plugged into this Fender Twin and played the whole show like that. And at the end of the night, I got all these people going, "Man, your sound was amazing. How did you get that sound?" And I go, "Oh my God, I'm playing through a rat pedal and a delay and getting rid of $40,000 worth of stuff over here." And so I ended up selling it all and getting rid of that whole Bradshaw rack,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
that outboard gear. And just because I realized my 1961 Strat that I was playing that night through a blackface Fender Princeton sounds better than all that stuff, So
the problem is you can over elaborate, because once you get into sequencing all these sounds and especially with presets where you can have 3 different sounds in one song, and there's automatic switching and all of these, the more you get into it, it can become kind of like an obsession, and then you're at the end of it thinking it's taking away from the fun of the playing. So I remember myself, just when you'd be playing that kind of a gig, and then it was nice to just pick up a guitar and play with just maybe a sustain pedal or with a nice bass distortion, something simple.
I play with Stuart Copeland a lot these days in his thing he's got going. And I tell him, Andy Summers really was responsible for a lot of us LA studio guys going down that long, dark highway of the effects racks and everything. And because that was what was popular, and you needed to show up at a session and sound like that. Not just the Police, but a lot of other bands, Cyndi Lauper and
U2 and so on. Yes.
U2, yeah. So, and this guy, Bob Bradshaw, was building racks and effects systems for all those people, from David Gilmour to Andy Summers to The Edge. Everybody was having a Bradshaw rack. And I had the second one he ever built. I was an early adapter. But anyway, long story short, I got rid of it all. And I believe in understanding one's signal path. So if anything goes down, there's a workaround. You can
plan B, but a simple plan B.
Yeah. That you understand. You don't have to call a tech in to do it.
Yes, exactly. So let's go back a little bit to, your kind of beginnings. So, you were born in Santa Monica. I'm nearly sure that's correct anyway. And so for you then, as a young boy, and you kind of what drove you to want to become a musician? What was it like? Was it something in the house? Was it something that made you say, I want to be that band, I want to be that artist?
Well, my dad played ukulele, a little bit of piano. Both of my grandmothers played piano. It was more like I had three older cousin girls. And when we go over to their house to play with them, they had, one of them had George Harrison posters up on the ceiling and on the walls and everything. So they probably were the ones that turned me on to the Beatles in about 63, 64, because they were 64 actually, because that's when the Beatles hit America, right? And but another thing that was really powerful for me was the Byrds. And I asked for a guitar for about a year before, on my 11th birthday, my grandmother gave me a nylon string guitar, and my parents gave me a guitar lesson later that day. And the first song I learned was my favorite song at the time, which was Mr. Tambourine Man, the Bob Dylan song covered by the Byrds, right? And I think I learned that like on day one. I mean, he showed me the chords and here's how you do it, and I was just struggling with it. But I had plucked on my dad's ukulele and my buddy's sister's guitar for the year before that, so I got just rolling right away, and my influences started coming really fast. Because besides Roger McGuinn and George Harrison, by the time, I don't know, there was a lot of surf music going on in Los Angeles. You could come home from school every day, and while you're doing your homework, just turn on the TV, and the local stations would play these surf shows, just surf music with guys surfing. It would just be sort of background wallpaper. But, I heard all that great reverby surf guitar, and I didn't know who I was listening to. Probably a lot of Dick Dale and the Champs and all kinds of bands. But if I jump to when like real virtuoso guitar playing started to happen, I would have to say it was the album Wheels of Fire by Cream. So that's a few years later. I'm definitely simmering along and listening to, Creedence Clearwater and all that stuff, going on, and learning it and playing it. But once I heard like Crossroads and Spoonful and stuff like that, I jumped into like trying to be a something heavier than just an accompanist, like strummer singer guy. And but I had another great experience. I was in all these bands and stuff through high school, and playing and high school dances and proms and all that stuff. But then I think I was 17, and we were in Pasadena, where I grew up. We were out to dinner. My dad took us all, the whole family, out to dinner. And as we're leaving this place called the Sawmill in Pasadena on Lake Street, I see this guy singing and playing in the bar, and I go, I could probably do that. So I asked the waitress there, who do I talk to about doing that, singing here, playing here? And she goes, the manager's in tomorrow morning, come on down. So I brought a guitar, and I said, I want to play. And it turns out he was looking for somebody. I played him 3 songs. One was a solo acoustic version of Here, There, and Everywhere by Paul McCartney. And he said, you got the gig. It pays $35 a night, and you'll do Sundays and Mondays. Well, then he said, you are 18, aren't you? And I said, no. When do you turn 18? I said, in 2 months. So when I turned 18, I called him back, and he goes, you got the gig. So I start playing and singing 2 nights a week, and it eventually became 5 nights a week. And then one day this guy comes in while I'm doing my solo acoustic thing. And he said, I like the way you play, kid. If you ever want to get together and jam a little, that'd be great. He was an older guy. I said, sure. How about tomorrow? So he goes, yeah, come on over. So I go over to his house, and let me see if I can demonstrate this better than, I can probably demonstrate better than describe it to you. Yeah, this one will do. This is the guitar I was playing before you called, so I may as well keep it rolling.
It's warmed up as well as you. Yeah. That's good.
He basically pulls out some music, and he says, and he goes, let's play this, and I wasn't a very good reader, but I could read chord changes. So the first chord was an F major 7, right? So that chord I knew. The second chord was a D minor 7 flat 5. And I said, okay, well, here's a D minor 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So is that it? And he said, Yeah, but you should probably finger it like that. Of course, you can use an open string. If you want the flat five on the top, is that a lot of people put the flat five on the bottom. You could have the seventh on top, or the seventh could be on the bottom. This is probably my favorite voicing. But you know, a lot of people use this, put the root on top. Of course, that's the most common one. You can do this one, and that's basically nothing more than an F minor six. So every time you have F minor six, so my brain just blew because I thought I was pretty good. I could play Crossroads by Cream. I could play all kinds of, I could play pretty much, Stairway to Heaven, whatever's on.
He gave you an encyclopedia to read, really, just by giving you all those different voicings.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, and so it gave me like this new chain of study. I didn't really think of myself as wanting to be a jazz player, like Joe Pass or Pat Martino or anything. But it started me down that highway of learning voicings and how to play over chord changes, and it really really changed my life right that day, right? And then I immersed myself in that music in jazz, and I learned countless chord melodies and learned songs and studied and took lessons and got gigs. And I even went to Berklee College of Music for 3 months and, the summer accelerated program. I just really got into it. And it was kind of like later, towards the end of that 5-year period, 6-year period, maybe, I was driving in my car and I heard this Joe Walsh guitar solo on the radio. I'm popping through the stations, and I hear this amazing Joe Walsh solo, and I literally pulled the car over because I realized the state of rock and roll guitar had really come a long way since I left off, back when Aerosmith was just starting out. And, that to me sounded great, but it was sort of more Rolling Stones stuff, it wasn't really any new concepts for me. But long story short, it's just the Joe Walsh thing. I pulled over and I realized, I love that. That's the music of my people. What am I doing? I can play 25 choruses on Stella by Starlight, right? But this is the music of my people, as well as country music, bluegrass music, blues, fusion music, weather report,
That moment in the car listening to the stereo, that has happened to lots of artists too. I think, like, I remember a story about Eric Clapton when he first heard Hendrix, and he heard it on the car radio. And he had to he said he had to pull over. And I remember somebody talking about Rory Gallagher in the same way. And there's certain artists, aren't there, that when you hear, you kind of feel you have a hold on what you either want to play or what you want to listen to. And it doesn't matter, like, if it's heavy rock or blues or whatever. Sometimes you hear somebody and you go, wow, that changes your whole trajectory, doesn't it?
Right. And then it occurred to me that if I dig it, I must learn it. If I love Albert King or Mike Bloomfield, I need to learn what they're doing and assimilate it. And I think that cross-pollination of styles is what makes music go progress, Music that doesn't cross-pollinate, like Dixieland jazz, it's very, or even, well, I think gypsy jazz is starting to really open up, but I hear guys like Tony Rice, who's a bluegrass player, he plays all that, all those kind of licks, that stuff, right? I hear him playing like some Pat Martino licks and adding, stuff like that into his solos, and I go, wow, that's just it's like cross pollination. So.
Yeah, yes, exactly. But you see, for you, I suppose all of that kind of qualities that you aspired to have really benefited then you later as you became a session musician, because you could be called on to do all kinds of work, pop work, blues work, everything, soundtracks, everything. So that really benefited you to be able to turn on those different styles.
Yeah, and I had experiences where one time a guy called me and said, it's a country record, just bring a Telecaster and a little Fender amp. That's all we need. And I go, okay, so do you mind if I have my cartage delivered, meaning my cartage company drop off a couple of trunks of guitars and some amps and some pedals and stuff? And he goes, oh, okay, go ahead. So I show up and there's another guy there with a Telecaster and a Fender amp, right? And he has the cowboy shirt and he's got the boots and he even has the hat. And I go, wow, okay. So we start in And I don't remember what happened, but we do the typical country version. The producer goes, let's just rock it out a little more. So I go and put the telly down and get a Strat or something and put a little hair on my sound, a little distortion. And oh, that's better. Let's even rock it out more. Then I get out a Les Paul or an SG, and we take it to the next level. And then he wanted an acoustic version, which the only guy that brought an acoustic, right? So we played an acoustic version. He asked me to come back the next day, and the guy with the cowboy hat wasn't there, you know. So in other words, the specialist, blinders on, I play one style really well. That's not how you make a living. You know, you make a living by being more versatile.
Yeah, you have to be able to adapt because, when they say beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but I always kind of twist it and say music is in the eye of the ear holder because
yeah.
Things can change. And it's like saying you only like one style of music. That's not true because you can hear something that can totally blow you away and say, I love that. And so the thing is, I think for producers, when they hear a guitar player who has that feel in their fingers, they're thinking, what else can this guy do with this track? What else can let me see?
There's many tricks to doing that studio thing. First of all, being able to read music takes you out of I can only do record projects and demos. It gets you into I can do TV work, I can do movies, soundtracks, and I can do jingles. And there's so much more money in that kind of work. Just from a financial standpoint, So learning to read was a really important thing for me, and I'm self-taught on that. I just had to sit down and do it, and I actually did it with another friend. A buddy of mine was frustrated too that we were losing work, so we decided to just buy a stack of music about that big, spend $75 each on different duet books and music books, flute books, clarinet books, trumpet books, high reading books, saxophone books, anything in the treble clef that wasn't exercises. We both bought that, and the other two requirements were a coffee pot and a metronome. And we'd meet at my house Monday, him Tuesday, him Wednesday, and we did it for about 6 months and really learned to read well. And I don't get the opportunity as much as I used to, but it just comes back, comes right back to me. So it was a really good thing to do because the movie soundtrack thing is amazing. That is a gift that keeps on paying for the rest of your life. Every one of you do. So
depending on different types of gigs, you get sheet music, and maybe some of them are just like cheat sheets, where you have the chords and the chord structure and the arrangement. But then others, let's say they're working with composers, you're getting very, very detailed sheet music, and they want you to be able to play and read everything on it. Because I suppose the thing with guitar musicians over the years, they would look at the sheet music, but then when it comes to the solo, they would do their own thing maybe and stuff. So the more detailed your eye is for that sheet music, you don't have to stray away as far.
Well, I mean, there's two different things. I mean, reading chord charts in bar lines is one thing, here's a typical example. This is just a bunch of bars with chords over them. Reading notes is a whole other thing, and guitar is difficult. You can play F in 5 places on the guitar, and so it's really important to be able to read in every position. It's quite a thing. One learns the C major scale, right, and then learns it in every position, right? Right, like that, right? But then one also needs to be able to do this. In other words, know it from here to here. So wherever you are on the guitar, you know where those notes are. So, and that's in all 12 keys. So that's the key to reading most of the people that are going to listen to this podcast are going, yeah, I don't need to know that. And you don't. You can play guitar all day long, without knowing how to find the notes on the staff or where they are on the guitar.
I love that line. I think it was Joe Pass said that to you. Was it? If you played in one key and you know all the keys.
Yeah, if you play a song in one key, you should know it in all 12 keys. that blew my mind because that showed you what a heavy musician he is. He relates those intervals and everything. It's pretty cool. So
I think what it is, the more detailed your brain is as a musician, the more it wants. It kind of needs to be fed. So I can imagine that time you and your friends studying all this sheet music, whereas somebody else would maybe say, "Oh, they're nerding out on this." They're going into real detail. But for you guys, it's kind of like discovering a new science because you're like, "Oh my god, oh, and there's a voicing there, and oh my god, and I understand it more." It opens up a whole new world, doesn't it?
yeah, it does. And the older I got, the more I just got into like harmony and enjoying like what I would be driving home from somewhere and I'd hear a song on the radio and go, God, I've always loved that song. And my ear's good enough to where I can go, okay, that's the 2 chord, that's the 5 chord. Here's a perfect example. If I play like anyway, I'm driving home one night and I'm hearing that. I'm going, okay, when I go, that's the 2, that's the 5, that's the 1. Yeah, I can hear it. I'm not quite sure about this chord. It starts out the flat 7 to the 5. And then when Elton went on the my ear goes, what the hell just happened? You know what he did? He did what Cole Porter and a lot of those jazz guys do, what McCartney and Lennon did a lot. They went to a key that's up a minor third. And instead of going right there in the key of F, they went to the 4 chord, which is B flat, but they made it a minor, so it's 2.
So then it's like they harmonize.
Yeah, they went to the 2, 5, 1, 4, right? And then to the 5 chord of Goodbye on the Brick Road, to the chorus. So what I was going to say, as I've gotten older, I've been really intrigued by songwriters and harmony. And like I ask myself, why the heck do I love this song? It's such a great piece of music. Why? And then I learn it and then I kind of study and I go, okay, now I see, because of the way he just jumped up to that up a minor third to a new key and found a way to modulate back to the mothership key of F. And so I've done that countless times with people like Brian Wilson and Paul Simon and, even Billy Joel, all kinds of Beatles songs. McCartney was a real musical um, harmony guy. He really knew it. But Lennon, in a sort of primitive way, the way he breaks rules, there's a lot of rule breaking going on with both of those guys. Rules that are meant to be broken in order to make it an interesting song.
Yes, of course, of course. That's the beauty of music, isn't it? Because some people would say, "Oh, this guy's too technical," and then you get someone who plays simple chords and there's more harmony or melody. But it's a meeting of the two. That's the beautiful part, isn't it? Because you can look at like real guitar virtuosos and maybe they're too technical, and then you see somebody else who's very technical, but you have the feel. So you might fall into that where you go, I love his wizardry on the guitar and the technical side of it, but he has that feel maybe that Stevie Ray Vaughan had, So I think what it is, and what I always used to think was when I started out my musical journey and I started learning songs by ear, and I always learned them by ear and then teaching other people and stuff. The great thing about it is sometimes you learn a song and you think, oh, I have it. And then after you've learned it, you listen again, you go, no, hold on, there's a chord there that's different to how I heard it the first time. So I love that part of it.
Yeah, you definitely develop better ears over the years, and things that I figured out back in the '70s are completely different now. There's a better way to do it, or I had it
Exactly.
wrong.
Yeah, it could
One
be.
of the two. So, but I really love that we're talking about harmony because I don't think a lot of guitar players think about that, and songwriters. So many songs that are written today, they're really not thinking about, they don't modulate somewhere. A modulation means going to a new key for emotional or lyrical impact, right? In other words, if I can go somewhere to make the chorus a bigger deal than the last couple verses, that's a beautiful thing. And so many people don't. Having said that, a song on my new record, it's called Spike the Punch. And I challenged myself to write a song. I didn't do it as a challenge. I just did it, and it turned out to be fine. All on one chord.
All in one chord. Wow.
It's all F minor pretty much. I started with a riff. And I put a bass line. Right? I might be able to do this. Anyway, the thing I put into my little looper there was going to be should be an octave down, because that's a bass player. Then the whole song is, just F minor with a vocal over it, and it doesn't go anywhere.
That little syncopation you do at the end, even though it's on that chord, it changes it, doesn't it? You know what I mean? The rhythm makes it sound like it's something different.
Right. Yeah, it isn't static. Yeah. I look at rhythm guitar as one of the most important parts of making a living, rhythm guitar. And you can be influenced by so many different people. I take a lot of influence from Steve Cropper for the R&B stuff, Jimi Hendrix, who got his stuff from Cropper and Curtis Mayfield. I love Jimmy Nolan, who played with James Brown Band. I love Larry Carlton. One time Larry called me to sub on a gig, and he showed me what he had played on the record, and I went, wow, there's such inventive ideas.
That's cool. Yeah, and it's nice because, like you said, that what's really nice about guitar chords and voicings is sometimes you can hang on one chord like to get melody ideas, but just changing the voicings you can hang there for longer. You know what I mean? Because it's that whole, I used to love that exercise where you just start on a basic A and you do all the voicings all the way down through it, and you're like, wow, even though they're the same chord, they're like different.
Oh yeah, and you can start to think like, I'll get this maple neck guitar because I think it'll show up better on the screen. You can start to think like a piano player as opposed to a guitar player, because guitar players all start off with cowboy chords. There's an A, I call them cowboy chords, the nice open voicings there. Yeah. But eventually you can take those same triads. You can take those same triads and you can use them like that, or you can take the middle note out. So if I take that C sharp out and put it up an octave, I get that voicing. And if I take the middle note, the E out, I get that one, and becomes. So now, if you learn that kind of mentality, like that's kind of more of piano voicings, If you think like that, you can just have an entirely other approach to playing rhythm guitar. In other words, if I have to go D to A, I could go. I could do
And that's, that's really nice because you can get some lovely sounds there and some really nice voicings out of those different, can't you?
Yeah, very different. Yeah. I mean, this is a cool thing. If I start with, say, I'll start with an A. I can make it an F. You see, that's the root, third, fifth, root, third, fifth of F. I can make it a B flat. I can make it a G. I can make it an E flat. You see, so just in that little space, I can get all kinds of chords. And that's just on the bottom string. So all that happens, all that happens up there too. So anyway, it's pretty cool.
That's cool. That's really nice. And so when you were doing a lot of the session work then, and obviously that kind of you were in Wildcat Studios, and that kind of led to the introduction to Supertramp. Was that something, because you were a session musician, were you thinking, I want to get playing with a band and tour, or were you kind of happy doing your own band and doing session work? What was your kind of career goals at that stage before you started playing with Supertramp?
That's a good question, because I never really thought of that. I never thought in terms of that. I was making a living, and that was my goal. It's like I want to wake up every day and play the guitar for a living, right? And so far, at age whatever that was, 29, I had been successful. I'd never had another job, right? I'd only played guitar my entire life. When Supertramp came along, I was doing a session somewhere, and then a guy, I got along really well with this engineer. I think he was a British guy, and we exchanged numbers. He was getting good sounds out of me, and I had a fun day, Later on that night, like literally 9:30 at night, I got a call from Supertramp's front of house engineer, who was kind of arranging these auditions, and he asked me to come down the next morning at 10 a.m. And I said, well, I don't really know any of the songs. And this is before you could go on YouTube and learn a few Supertramp songs. Right? So I went down there, and I told Rick Davies, I said, hey, Rick, nice to meet you. I got to confess, I really don't know any of your songs. I don't know any of your music. And, but I can learn. I'm a fast learner. And he goes, we don't want to play any of our bloody songs. Let's play the blues. So we were off to the races. We just played it. And little did I know, they recorded it. And I was like the 19th guy they'd heard in the course of a week or two, And I got along with them. They had me sing something, and they were recording it on reel-to-reel tape. And they called me back later that night, the management company, and offered me the gig. So, but I was a sideman until about 1990. That was back in 85. I was a sideman until 1996 when they made me a member. So
Supertramp, obviously, before that kind of with their early hits, it was a lot of piano sounds, a lot of keyboards and stuff like that. So their sound has kind of changed over the years. So when you came into Supertramp, did you feel that they wanted you to do what they'd already been doing, or did you feel they wanted you to put something new into the sound?
That's a great question, because it has a funny answer. They had just recorded a record called "Brother, Where You Bound," and they had the title song had David Gilmour on it, and it was a really long David Gilmour solo. And they said, we want you to learn it note for note. And it's like, 7 minutes of, it would have taken me forever. And I could do it. I could write it all out, and I could study it, and I could figure it out. But I somehow had the balls to say, guys, I tell you what, I'll start it like he does, and I'll end it like he does. But if you let me improvise all in the middle, I guarantee it'll live and breathe every night. And some nights I might be really inspiring, but I promise I will never suck. And so Rick said, we'll give it a go. And I remember I had to play over something that was like, it's a real simple thing, right? So G sharp minor, F sharp to E.
Kind of a reggae vibe, no?
Well, no, it was more of a shuffle. I don't mean to imply reggae. whatever. I don't remember what I did, but I just started like he did and ended like he did, and they dug it. I was okay. Okay, sold. The next one that they said we want you to play it note for note was "Goodbye Stranger," right? And that's got the famous famous wah wah thing. So I said,
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
you what, I'll start with that wah wah thing, and I'll end with a similar figure with a wah wah 8 VA, meaning I'll do that, and let me improvise in the middle. We'll give it a go. So I did it, and they let me do it. And then slowly but surely, except for maybe just a few things that were really iconic that I had to do, like Bloody Well Right had some stuff you had to do in the beginning, and so did Rudy, a couple of the other tunes, that really needed to be that solo. Um, for the most part, they just let me do my thing, and that was a huge, I would say, a coup for me because I don't really want to go see the Eagles and see them play the solos exactly like the record. I really don't. I'd rather see what the guys come up with since then.
I always love that approach. Is like it, and I think lots of guitar players love that. Saying, "Well, I'll start it like the original and I'll end it or whatever," because they're thinking, "Yeah, it's a really cool solo, but I want to put my own spin on it." And then they're like, "But then the crowd won't like it," and they're like, "Yeah, we'll give them the opening few bars of that." And if you're a good guitar player and you can turn that into something new, I think even the person who wrote the song will appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It takes it somewhere. It lets it live and breathe every night. That's what my argument was. If we just keep it stagnant, like going through the motions of playing what's on that record, and it really became a great band when the original five guys. So Roger Hodgson left, and then I worked with original four. And then when it reconvened, the bass player, Doogie Thompson, was living in Chicago and hadn't really picked up a bass in the interim 10, 12 years. So they asked me, you know anybody? And I got the guy that was currently playing in my band to jump in, a guy named Cliff Hugo. And once they saw what Cliff could do, based, which was so much, a super professional killer bass player with amazing time, who was, versus a guy who hadn't played in all those years. They just said, "Oh yeah, we got to go with this guy." So the band just got better and better. The original drummer, original sax player, and Rick, and so yeah,
That's the thing about groups, isn't it? Because when a lot of groups start, they might be just a couple of friends, and they might say to one guy, "Can you play the bass?" And he goes, "No, but I learn." So the thing is that
Oh, but I have a van.
yeah, I have a van. So the thing is, some people are playing instruments in bands and they aren't very technical or they haven't had maybe good tuition, but over the years they become really good players and stuff. But then what happens is if you bring in somebody who's very technical and very good and can play anything, of course it's going to make a huge difference to the sound, isn't it, as well?
Big time, yeah, yeah. And so unfortunately, Rick got cancer. He got something called multiple myeloma back in around 2015. We had a really big tour planned. I think it was for 16 or 17. A lot of arenas were already sold out, and we had to cancel the whole thing. And he's in remission. He's doing fine, but he just doesn't. I think he just turned 79. So last Saturday. So I talked to him, and he just doesn't have the energy to put together one of these monster tours with 10 semi trucks and the whole big thing. So it's too bad. I think the touring days are really over. However, I would love to see us do some sort of a residency somewhere. The only place that comes to mind here is Las Vegas, and he kind of hates Vegas. But I just went and saw Sting in Vegas do his show, and since I've been playing with Stewart, I got some backstage passes and everything, and he was tremendous, and it was a great rock concert. I mean, it was the real thing. So I loved it.
That's cool. And when you look back on the time you spent playing with Supertramp, was there one song that you loved to play the most?
Wow, I love to play the song "Crime of the Century." We did that every night last, and although I didn't have a big solo in it, it was still a lot of fun. And I just love that song. You know the tune. It's off the album by the same name.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it's kind of a really heavy, kind of a ballady thing. And there's a part in the tune where this piano plays this figure, and four times, and then the whole band comes in, and the drummer hits a gong. And at that point, back in the really old days, they had 100 airport landing lights that went off, bam, from the lighting truss and blinded the audience that moment, right? So um, I knew it was coming, so I kept a camera on one of my speaker cabinets, and I didn't have to play on that downbeat. So I'd reach back while the lights were down and everything, and get my camera, and I knew the exact beat, and I hit it. And I got some amazing pictures of these huge, huge audiences. One is like 500,000 people, and some giant festivals, 160,000, that kind of thing. And with digital cameras in your phone, there's a delay, so I could never get it. It had to be a real click.
You'd have to go before the beat.
Yeah, I'd have to figure that out, and I never got it right, so I just quit doing it.
When with your own band, the Carl Verheyen Band as such, when you started that, tell us about the inception of that, because you have been playing with so many different artists and doing session work. Was it something that in the early days you said, I want to have my band kind of running in the background of this all the time?
Yeah, if you go all the way back to my teenage years, I had a girlfriend, and she goes, "What are you going to do when you grow up?" And I go, "Here's how it's going to be. I'm going to make a record, and then I'm going to go tour all over the world. Then I'm going to come back and make another record the next year and tour all over the world, and that's going to be my life. I'm going to be that artist. I'm going to be Roger McGuinn or George Harrison or Eric Clapton or one of those guys." In the end, what happened was studio work was this gigantic detour, because that's basically what I'm doing now. I wouldn't trade my life for a minute, because that was a great experience, and it's still going on. I'm still doing recording sessions occasionally, and producing people. But um, the inception of the band was after that first Supertramp tour. I figured, okay, now I'm a rock star. It'll be no problem getting a deal, a record deal. And reality was, no, you're not. You're a sideman in a band of some rock stars. That was the reality. But I'm like 29,
Yeah.
30 years old. But anyway, I did get a record deal, and I came out with my first record, 1986, 87, right in there after the first Supertramp tours, because I toured 85 and 86, and then we were done for a while. So I put out a record, and it didn't happen till the second record that I could start, getting some inroads into bigger crowds at gigs. And then the third record, one called Slaying Justice, which was kind of a bluesy record. I played the Long Beach Blues Festival, and there was another guitar player there named Walter Trout. And he said, "Hey, man, I like the way you play. Do you have any distribution in Europe?" And I said, "No, just the US." And he goes, "I'm going there tomorrow. Give me a CD, and I'll hand it to my record company president there and see if he wants to sign you." And I go, "Well, that'd be great. Would you? Would you? Would you?" And I gave him the CD. He goes, "But let me warn you, I've given him 50 records, and he's never picked one person. He's hated everything." So he goes, "At least 50. So anyway, that following Friday, I got a call from their record company saying, we want to sign you, but you have to promise you'll tour here." And I said, "In a heartbeat, I'd love to." So that basically was around 97. And that's when I started getting out there and touring Europe and the US. I still haven't done a concert of my own in South America or Japan. They've just never been right. The money's not been right. I would lose too much money, that kind of thing. So anyway, that was kind of the inception of it. Once 1997 and my third album came around, that's when I was really able to get going, get started, and get out there and tour with a steady working group all the time.
I think for some session musicians, they maybe get more session work than they have touring. They might have like studio work, They might have touring work, but then they mightn't get the time or the opportunity to do what they want to do with their own band, whether it be for financial reasons or whether it be just not working with the right people. So I think you, in your world, over the last few years, you've got to experience all of those things. You've worked with some amazing artists and producers. You've got to play with Supertramp, and you've got to do your own band, which has been successful. That's great.
Yeah, there was a period though, like this transitional period from being 10 sessions a week, 8 to 10 sessions a week studio guy to like, okay, now I have a 1 month tour and I'm going to lose money on the 1 month tour because just one of those weeks might be a movie date that would pay more than I'm going to make the whole tour. But I prioritized and I just said, what do I really want to do with my life? And that was, it's more soul satisfying to me to play in front of a bunch of people and my own songs, and the whole front row is singing along. Much more satisfying than sitting in a room with headphones on, playing, a cue for a sitcom. You know what I mean? Because that might be a sitcom thing. A TV sitcom might be, done. Okay, next.
Interludes and cut to scene and everything. Yeah.
Fade to black, happy to sad, all that stuff. So it wasn't all like that, the studio work, but that to me was just work, right? As opposed to getting out and playing in front of people and playing stuff that really challenges me and try to, there's a certain joy and something I'm really thankful for, and that is being driven around all day long where you can think about how can I make tonight's performance better than last night, and think about, let's debrief a little bit. What did I do? Okay, on that one tune where I had that difficult figure, you know, I have like a figure that I kept messing up. All right, I'm just going to get to the sound check and just practice that 20 times to where I can do it. So that's a privilege. I think that's a privilege to be out on tour and be, it's hard work. I mean, my wife's come on some tours and going, God, you guys work your butts off. But
the hotel life is not easy as well.
yeah. The difference between Supertramp and a private jet and a 5-star hotel and my band, which is a Mercedes Sprinter and a guy driving the gear too. The difference is a whole other thing. So
different, I can imagine. But they're each rewarding in their own way, and maybe on the smaller tours, maybe you get more time to think and work on new material because you don't have as much press and things like that.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, exactly. So
for you then, that was an interesting point you made about missing. You can have lucrative session work that you may miss out on, but now with modern technology, I'm sure that if you're doing a tour in Europe and then your producer rings you and says, listen, this sitcom, they need a part, you can, like, digitally with FTP and all that, you can do that over the net now. No?
Yeah, I have done that a little bit too. I've done jingles and some. There was a TV show called Lost. I played on that one from a distance, and now I can. My home studio is such that I could do a lot of stuff here. Played on a guy's German record, and played every song here, just in this room, and it's selling well. So yeah, technology is really amazing.
There's nothing like that feeling, obviously, of being in the studio and having the equipment around you and the engineers. So when you're doing it at home, does it change your playing, do you think?
Well, yeah, you're not getting that inspiration of watching the drummer and watching it's definitely different. And that's why all my records, I don't do them in the box like that. I do them in a room and hire the best musicians, and we talk through, we do a take, we listen, we come back out. The other thing about doing stuff at a home studio, and I almost pity the people that only do that kind of work, because when you go into these big, amazing studios here in Los Angeles, like the Village Recorders or Sunset Sound or Capitol Records, some of these big rooms, and you're hearing your sound played back over the big, I call them the party speakers, the big speakers. you really get to analyze your tone as opposed to your little home studio, what that sounds like. You really hear what it's doing, and it's very inspiring, so.
How do you feel then as well about that? Two words that I kind of have heard people say, and I always consider them. When it comes to music, how do you feel about the whole personal bias? Because, for example, when if you hear your demo of your songs at home and you're like, I think that's actually a good song, that could be a contender, and then you go to the studio. But like you said, when you hear your song through the party speakers and you go, damn, that is a good song. So do you feel that the better equipment you have and the better sound you can get, it adds to personal bias, or you're more critical of what comes out?
I think you're more critical, but if it's a good song, it does confirm, like, hey, I was right. That sounds
Yeah,
really
it
good. And, I take really a lot of time to think about each part that's going to go on my record. And on other people's records, I take a lot of time going. I don't need any more in the mid range. For instance, if you have something like a groove like, well, I could put a looper. Let's see if I do that. If I go, okay, now I got that going on. A rhythm part that comes to mind might be like, but see, to my ears, that's down in the mid range where you're going to have keyboards, you're going to have, you're going to have all kinds of things jockeying for position in the mid range. You could take it up an inversion, even, and that might work better. It's basically the same part, right? But then I might think, what if I syncopate a little bit? What if I use some what we call skank playing? Skank means like you hit all 6 strings, but you only sound one. You mute everything else. So I might come up with something like this. Let me get the groove.
You're nearly double timing it, aren't you?
Yeah, I got real busy. I got really busy, but maybe that's the section that you can use that in. The producer might say, "Hey, that's a little too busy, Carl," and I say, "I'll take Fridays off." If he says you're too busy, take Fridays off. So I might simplify, or how about, in other words, you just kind of find that part that's going to fit in, and then you decide, all right, then what if it needs some chorusing? What if it needs some delay? And what if it needs some kind of a wiggle tone, some tremolo? It could be all kinds of different things that make it work in the track. So.
Wow, that's really cool. It's nice. And it's nice to fit into those pockets, isn't it? Those little,
Yeah.
you find those pockets within the beat and the pockets within even the bass line, for example.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Sounds like you're quite a player.
No, I don't play as much as I used to. I wish I did play more now, but I used to play a lot and played a lot of bands and stuff. But the thing is, I love when I'm speaking to guitar players like you because it inspires me to play more, that kind of way. So, and I love that. I love that in when you're recording stuff and you find things within the melody that opens up all other melodies, doesn't it? And which moves me on to my next point because, you're a guitar teacher too. And with your instructional books and videos with True Fire and teaching in universities and colleges, that also is another major string to your bow. And is that something that you do a lot now still?
Well, I stopped teaching in those universities because they had a course called Advanced Electric Guitar in the Style of Carl Verheyen, which was quite an ego bump. But on the other hand, only I can do it, so I can't really sub it out. And so as I went on the road more and just got to to where I had to cancel it just got to a point where I couldn't pull it off and do the solo artist thing too. So I don't do that as much. The online stuff, like my own little one, is called the CV Academy on my website. I constantly update videos on there, and there's like 275 of them. That's also available on TrueFire, and I do some private lessons here and Skype, Zoom, that kind of stuff. But I find teaching to a good student is invigorating for me. You're turning. First of all, you're passing it on to the next generation, so they don't just become a bunch of typers. They actually make music with their hands. That's a beautiful thing. And the other thing is when you get somebody who you see the light bulb going off, and all of a sudden he gets it, and he's playing better than last week or last month or whatever. That's something I really enjoy doing. The good student.
The session work, because you've worked with some amazing artists, and there's such a long list of artists. Do you ever get starstruck in the sense that you're thinking, oh, I'm going to play with Dolly Parton, or I'm going to play with the Bee Gees, or I'm going to play with anybody, and I'm not sure if is the idea I have is the right idea for them? Have you found yourself kind of stuck sometimes?
No, I think I go into it, and this is a healthy attitude that I can pass on to your listeners. I go into there going, you know what? I'm the expert in the room when it comes to guitar parts, guitar sounds.
Right.
I'm the expert. They can tell. A lot of producers don't know what they want till they hear it. A lot of artists don't know what they want till they hear it. You can play something and they'll say, "Don't play that. That sounds like Andy Summers," and they go, "He's cool in my book." But here, I'll give you another idea.
Yeah.
Oh, don't play that. That sounds like Steely Dan. Well, I kind of love Steely Dan too, but I'll give you something else. You go, how about make it more R&B? And you go, well, okay, but it's not an R&B song. But I'm the expert in the room. So my confidence over the years built up to a point where nothing like that would faze me. And I only had one or two producers in my life be really nasty, to me, just like, have a bad attitude, and I just let it slide off my shoulders, just thinking, I'm the expert here, don't worry about it. I'm going to come up with the part that's going to work for you. I don't say that, but it's in my mind. So
yeah, because I think what it is with people in the music industry, for example, and with producers, they can be guitar players, or they can be guitar players who didn't fulfill what they wanted to do. And, they might have some great ideas, but they can't carry it out. They don't have the chops. So the thing about it is, a lot of the time they want to tell the guitar player, this is how I want you to play it. But the guitar player maybe is like, yeah, but we could do it differently, and there's better ways to do that.
I've said that many times.
Yeah. And you might say, for example, we could harmonize stuff, like the Allman Brothers, like Thin Lizzy, whatever. There's ways we can do this. And they're kind of going, no, I don't want that. And you say, well, can I just show you maybe? So I'm sure you have those little debates, no?
Many times, they'll write something out and I go, well, you've written a 7-note chord. I've got 6 notes available if I use them all. So here's what a guitar player would do. They would knock out that one, and they'd have this exact voicing, and it's just exactly what you were looking for playable on the guitar. But this confidence concept, it works for stage fright too. If you're ever like thinking, oh my God, I got to go out there, and there's some really great players in the audience. I gotta measure up. You can just put yourself in the mindset of, yeah, but I'm the best Carl Verheyen there is. I might not even be the best player in this room. There might be some much heavier cats in the room checking me out. But today, and in this 100-mile radius, I'm the best me there is. And you can use that to just take a deep breath and go out and kick some ass. That's my theory. And it carried over from the studio, that confidence I got from after 1,000 sessions, going, all right, I know what I'm doing here. This is, they can't stump me, because if I can't do it, nobody can. That's the way I look.
And that's your craft now. And, it's like, it doesn't matter when you're a master craftsman in any kind of trade or any way of life. Once you get to that certain level, all those years you've built up, the experience, all comes to fruition. And you say, Yeah, that doesn't phase me, and I suppose what it is, over the years you learn to believe in yourself more and more, don't you?
Yeah, you do. But you hit on an interesting thing, Simon. At some point in the last 30 years, I realized I need to divide my career into three parts. So one is the craftsman, the craftsman, the master craftsman is the guy who walks into a recording session and they go, "We need that ZZ Top sound," right? So my mind goes, "Okay, ZZ Top. That's Billy Gibbons. He plays a Les Paul back pickup through like a Fender Champ amp, uses a lot of those pinch harmonics with the pick. He's got the Texas shuffle feel, which is different than the Chicago shuffle feel. Boom, here it is. I'm a big fan of Billy Gibbons. Here it is. That's that well listened craftsman thing. It's like a plumber coming in. Plumber comes in and goes, "Oh, okay, under the sink here, I see you've got a leaky thing. I'm going to go get a 2.5-inch pipe and a street elbow and a coupler and it's out in the truck." I go over to the guitar trunk and pull out the guitar. So then the second career would be, the sideman, like in Supertramp. For Supertramp, I can put a lot of my own thing in, but really what I needed to do, and what I need to do when I work with Stuart Copeland playing this Police Deranged for orchestra, or any kind of a situation where you're a sideman, you realize that the musical vision of this project is by that guy over there. In Supertramp, it's sort of this, it's Rick Davies and Roger Hodson's. It's kind of like a very progressive rock meets English dance hall music meets pop, and you got to have to keep whatever you come up with in that framework. So then the third career is solo artist, where I can do whatever I want to do, whatever I think, if I don't hear a D chord like this, but instead like that, or like this, or like this, I can put that in. You see what I mean? So you can make it your own, and that's why really I have to realize the different levels of creativity,
You can change
and I
it.
think of it as three different careers. Really, it's kind of a cool way to process it all.
One thing, just going back kind of to the gear and having the sounds, and you made an interesting point there where let's say you're trying to maybe not replicate that Billy Gibbons sound, but you're trying to get something similar. So you're like, oh, I have to use this guitar, or I have to use that amp, and we have to mic it this way. And for example, if you're doing Eddie Van Halen and you're trying to get the Brown sound and so on. Through the years, then obviously when you're working with a lot of gear, when it came to, for example, modeling amps, modeling guitars, even like I have a Variax guitar there I've used on some of my own recordings, and so sometimes you have a guitar that can replicate other guitars. So with you having like a big guitar collection, are there times when you're thinking, there's this guitar I need, or maybe I need something more digital? Like how do you go about that stage nowadays? Do you always have 12 guitars you bring for sessions?
Well, if I go work in a studio, I do have a 12 guitar trunk that's electrics and a 10 guitar acoustic trunk. And I have another trunk that can hold banjos, mandolins, dobros, things, ukulele, things like that. If it's a big movie date or something, yeah, I'm going to have those three trunks delivered. If I know that I'm just doing electric guitar overdubs, and I know that I can, well, if there is cartage, meaning they're going to pay for the stuff to be delivered, I'll send the electric trunk and the rig that's appropriate for the style of music, roughly. If it's a home session, I got pretty much everything here. I can. It used to be that when I was doing nonstop studio work and not touring as much, you kept your gear in a warehouse, a cartage warehouse, and you say, okay, bring this trunk number 2 and 3, and bring the rack stuff, and bring these 2 pedal boards, and set up at MGM Sony Studios, 10 o'clock start Thursday. And it would all be there, turned on, guitars out and tuned sometimes, if you asked them to. Sometimes I'd have them just tune some instruments that I knew I was going to play. Those days I'm not doing so much of that anymore, but there's nothing more, because I do have a Variax too, and I only use it for the sitar sound. The sitar sound,
Okay,
electric
yeah.
sitar sound is really good. So no, I pulled out a real SG or Flying V or 335 or Les Paul, Strat, Telly. I got some Gretsch guitars. I got some Vox guitars. Um, yeah, all kinds of stuff, you know. So it's good to have your go-to stuff that almost like secret weapons. You know, I know what
Right,
this is going to sound
of
like.
course, yeah.
You know, I know what this guitar is going to sound like when I plug it in.
Yeah, like I love that. I was watching your documentary and I love that part where you're playing the Strat and then you say, I'm going to get something a bit meatier and you reach for the Les Paul. And immediately before, as you're reaching for it, you're like, probably not going to need a pedal on this, you know, because you know with the humbuckers, the sound is going to be that little bit dirtier. So that's, you know, you can see that's real experience there because I always remember that line I've heard in the last few years where um, John Bon Jovi talks about Jeff Beck just coming into the studio and taking a guitar out of the cardboard box and plugging it directly into the amp, and he did that whole, you know, the Young Guns guitar solo, and you're kind of like some players know their sound before they even plug the guitar in, don't they?
Well, you know, so much of it is in the hands, and you are going to will that instrument to do what it needs to do. You know, it might be a lot of work. You know, some guitars are more work than others. Some just are so easy to play, and you know, the action height and the string gauge and everything is perfect. Others you got to struggle with a bit, but you're still going to find a way to make it work. I think that, like I said, most of it is in the hands, you know, and every player should have the ability. Let's see if I can do a little hair here. If I play like this C, right, and I shake it a little bit, I should be able to bend exactly to it with no vibrato, right? I should be able to bend exactly to it with no vibrato and then add a little vibrato like a singer, right? I should be able to bend to it with vibrato in motion, right? I should bend into it with big or tight, you know, different speeds. And that was my second finger. Third. All four fingers should be able to do it. And I mean, you know, obviously the first finger is going to have a real hard time bending up there below the fifth fret. But anyway, you get those kind of control, the ability to control um, the instrument, and I think you just find a way to make it work on whatever you're playing. I've had people tell me, "That sounds great, Carl. Can you play that on a Strat?" You know, when I'm playing a Telly. Oh no, why don't you try it on a Les Paul? And so each one has a different string tension, definitely between the Fenders and the Gibsons, different string, different scale length and stuff. So anyway.
So maybe you'll just play us out with something nice, maybe something.
Oh, okay. I'll just figure something out to play here.
And it's been a pleasure chatting to you and some really insightful, you know, topics there. And it's lovely to hear your kind of take on your own playing, you know.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been fun. Yeah. Let's see. What should we play? Lately, I've been, you know, when we were talking about harmony, I've been trying to sing. How about? By Brian Wilson.
Lovely. It sounds really nice.
Yeah, you know, that has an incredible B minor 7 flat 5, which when we were kids in 1966 when he wrote it, we had no idea what that chord was, you know, that flat 5 chord. But man, what a nice resolution to.
Yeah.
songwriter, Brian Wilson. So
A lovely sound out of that Strat too as well. Really nice.
thanks so much. All right.
Thank you so much, Carl. And, it's been a pleasure chatting to you.
Well, it's been a lot of fun, Simon. Great chatting with you.
Do you want to tell the people in Europe and worldwide what's next for you? What's coming up for you?
I'm not really coming back to tour Europe until April of 2024. So I usually tour in the fall, but we're gonna hold off this year and wait till the spring. So anyway, it's gonna be fun.
We look forward to that, and it'd be lovely to see you in Spain, maybe, or in Ireland in concert somewhere. It'd be really nice.
Yeah, either one.
Yeah, it'd be lovely.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you for taking the time. We want to commend you on a wonderful guitar playing and a wonderful knowledge of the guitar, and for giving a great input into lots of different groups, whether it be Supertramp, your own Carl Verheyen Band, or even your instructional videos. And of course, we didn't talk much about your sessions and TV work, but there's so much to your playing. It's just wonderful.
Well, let's do it again sometime. We'll do a part 2.
We will. We'll do a part 2 because I'm sure there's so much more we can get into. So listen, have a lovely day or evening, and thank you very much for giving us the time.
All right. Thank you, Simon. Take care.
Carl Verheyen, everybody. Thank you very much, Carl Verheyen. Some wonderful guitar playing, some wonderful insights into your own career and the careers of Supertramp and all the other bands you've played with. And so interesting to hear about your session work and everything. So I really enjoyed that chat. Being a guitar player, of course, you're inspiring me to play the guitar more. I have to get back to the grind. So thank you very much, Carl, and wonderful career, and long may it continue. Also, to you, the listener, thank you very much. We hope you enjoyed that interview with Carl. We hope it gets you playing and playing better and playing longer. And what a wonderful player Carl is, and we hope you enjoyed that immensely. So until the next time, we just want to thank you guys for being here, and we just like to remind you, please share the show, please review the show, please subscribe. I am your host, Simon K. This is the Collective Whisper podcast, and until the next time, look after your friends and family and the people you love. Take care. Bye-bye.